and welcome to Tourism Today, where we talk about all things tourism in Yakima and the Yakima Valley. I'm John Cooper, President and CEO of Yakima Valley Tourism. Joining me today is Rich Austin from our Sports Commission. And Rich came on the program late last year, and he gave us an update and background about sports tourism. And I thought it would be good for him to come back and talk a little bit more as what's been happening. So welcome, Rich.
Thank you, John. I appreciate being on again.
Yeah, great. So before we begin with some questions during an interview, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about what the Yakima Valley Sports Commission is all about?
Great. Well, in a nutshell, we are charged with boosting the economy of the Yakima Valley through sporting events. And we're a division of Yakima Valley Tourism. And I like to say that we will do anything that we can do to help tournament organizers be successful in the sporting events that they host and bring to the Yakima Valley.
You know, I can attest to that because Rich and his team are extremely hard workers, and they work hand in hand with all of our facilities, our local organizers and volunteers, as well as the various organizations. So, Rich, you do a great job in that regard. And
thank you very much.
So now we're doing these programs on Zoom because of our pandemic. As we know, COVID-19 has changed the game, shall we say, pardon the pun. And I'd like to just kind of briefly ask you, how has the sports scene changed during the pandemic?
Well, basically, the COVID-19 pandemic has put a stop on all sporting events in the Yakima Valley. The last major event that we hosted was the WIA State Basketball Championships, which concluded March 7th. And we got that event in under the wire. It was one where we didn't have to wear masks. We didn't have to social distance. We did a lot of hand sanitizing and cleaning and things like that to make everything safe. But that was the last large major event that we hosted. The next weekend, everything pretty much shut down. And since that time, we really haven't hosted any events, with the exception of a few like golf, auto racing events where you couldn't have spectators, but also where social distancing is pretty much built into the event. We have had a little bit of youth baseball in some of the different communities in the Yakima Valley, but it's been basically just zero for sporting events since the second week of March.
And that's the case not only locally, but all throughout the country. What do you think will be some of the changes that will be underway when sports events are able to come back?
I think that you'll have a lot of people that are really itching to get out. You have a lot of parents, participants, the kids, and spectators that want to get out and see and participate in sports. On the other side, you have probably just as many people that are going to be hesitant to get out there. So it's really going to be interesting to see how those two groups work together. But I think you'll see a lot of social distancing. You'll see mask use required except when you're playing, going to and from your cars or vehicles like that. I think that you'll see some of the sports that will have their own rules. Basketball will have their own rules for how they're going to keep people social distance and keep people safe. Same thing with football, same thing with baseball. So each one of those sports will have some new procedures in place. And I think you'll see a lot of the things that you're used to go away. You might not see the high fives. You might not see the fist bumps, the hugs, things like that. Benches might be changed around a little bit to accommodate for that social distancing. But whatever that may be, I think you'll see the Sports Commission try to be an information source for any of those organizations or events that need guidance with some of these new rules and procedures.
I think I can imagine that's going to be tough, especially for high school athletes, because there's a high level of camaraderie, and it's going to be a learning curve for all involved. And speaking of high school, we host a number of Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, or WIAA, state championships throughout the valley each year. Give us an example of how they're being affected with regards to their schedules and all the other activities related.
Well, I mentioned the WIA had their basketball championships here in early March, and that was the last event they hosted. So dance and drill, which we would host normally in late March, softball and baseball, tennis, which we would have in late May, those events were all canceled, along with all of their other events statewide. And I like to give the WIA a lot of credit. Since that time, they have had to basically redevelop and restructure their system. And they've had contingency plan after contingency plan in development. And right now, I don't really know that they know which one of those plans, if any, are going to work. But about 6 weeks ago, they did come up with a strategy for the 2020-21 school year. And that basically meant they're pushing everything out of the fall. So really, statewide, you're going to see most of the events take place, or the first events take place starting right after Christmas. I think it starts the week of the 28th of December. And they basically added 4 seasons, but they're going to start with season 2, and that will begin in the wintertime. And it's traditionally the winter season. You'll have basketball, you'll have wrestling, events like that will take place basically in their normal season. They'll be starting a little bit later, but they'll conclude with their state championships at the first week of March. A number of events, such as volleyball, slow pitch softball, which was new last year, and football, those will be moved to what they call season 3. That will start around the first week of March, and they'll conclude with their state championships the first week in May. Then traditionally the spring sports, season 4, and that will be softball, baseball, tennis, golf. Dance and drill is moving from March into in the end of June. So all those events will start around the 1st of March, and they will actually go after school goes out and after graduation takes place. So I think those championships are scheduled sometime around the last weekend of June.
Wow, a lot of change and a different time of year for a number of those sports. Speaking of events, the Sports Commission puts on some signature events that obviously we had to delay till next year. What are the plans for the future for the events?
Well, we host normally 4 events, and as you mentioned, those events are all postponed until 2021. And the reason for that, obviously, are the phases. We're not able to host large events. We're still in a modified phase 1.5, I believe, at this time. And you really
modified phase 1, yeah.
Phase 1. And then you really can't host any events until phase 4. And we're not really sure when that will be. So we've taken the time to plan for our events for 2021. We're looking at some changes, some additions, things to make things a little bit better. Just anything we can do to kind of make up for not having those events this year.
Key thing there is stay tuned. We're definitely going to provide the viewers the website for the Sports Commission, yakimasports.org, so they can get updates on all those events. And since we're talking about that, tell me about some of the other new events that are in the works or a possibility for 2021 and beyond.
I know that the Sozo Sports Complex is planning a number of new events for next year. They're working on several new soccer events, both traditional 11-on-11 soccer, looking for some 3v3 action. That's basically on a basketball court-sized field. We've had that here in the Yakima Valley, and we're looking to bring it back this year, but obviously it's got postponed to 2021. And they're also looking at some different running events, some different 5Ks, whether that be just a traditional event, a themed event, or maybe some kind of a mud type event. So those are some of the things that Sozo's working on. And I know State Fair Park is working on indoor football. They had just signed the Yakima Canines and to begin play sometime in April or May of this year. I think just right before basketball, they went ahead and made that announcement. And of course, that thing got pushed back a little bit as well. So they will start football next spring. And then I think you'll have a lot of different tournaments crop up. A lot of the organizations that host tournaments count on those events for their fundraisers. So they're going to be looking at trying to make up for the money that they may not have been able to raise this year, next year.
Right. Well, it sounds like a lot of plans are in the works, and important part is we've all got to do our part so that our community can advance the various phases, and really positive in regards to those efforts from a community standpoint. I think it'll help all of us as we not only bring our sporting events back and new ones, but visitors as well as just for our quality of life here in the Valley. So again, I want to thank you, Rich, for joining us today. And that concludes our program. We'll be back at another time to talk about another topic on travel and tourism. Until then, it's John Cooper and Rich Austin, and have a good day.